John 4:9. Dicit ergo ei mulier illa Samaritana, quomodo tu, Iudaios cum sis, bibere a me poscis, quae sum mulier Samaritana, non enim coutuntur Iudai Samaritanis. Therefore, that Samaritan woman says to him, how is it that you, though you are a Jew, ask of me to drink, I who am a woman of Samaria, a Samaritan woman? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Now, Jesus and the Samaritan woman are breaking out into more earnest conversation here, and the Samaritan woman sort of issues a challenge. Jesus had just asked her for some water, which was an unusual thing to do in that circumstance, in that time, for a number of different reasons, social and cultural and so on, religious, especially theological, we might say. And now she has some questions for him. Ergo dicit ei mulier illa Samaritana. Here's the adjective from the city name, Samaria, Samaritanus, would describe someone or something, masculine, feminine, or neuter, from that place. Illa mulier Samaritana says to him, here's the quotation, Quomodo tu, Iudaios cum sis, bibere a me poscis, quae sum mulier Samaritana. We'll end it there, and then there's kind of a coda at the end here, which seems to be added by the evangelist, which we'll get to in a moment. She says to him, how is it, we have to supply, how is it that you, and now we'll help ourselves out a little bit if we bracket this off, this little clause, as a subordinate clause, cum, indicating a kind of concession here, although you are a Jew, or even since you are a Jew, seeing as how you are a Jew, cis indicating that this is just sort of the general circumstances, this is the cum circumstantial, the general circumstances under which something happens. Seeing as though you are a Jew, you're a Iudaios, how, quomodo, do you, poscis, how do you ask or demand from me, a me, to drink? How are you asking me for something to drink, in other words? Now, in order to understand how quae sum, etc. comes in here, we've got to look back at me. And we've got to think more according to the sense than according to the words that we see in front of us, okay? So how is it that you, although you are a Jew, are asking from me to drink? And then quae sum is defining me. And it's kind of awkward to do this in English. There isn't really an easy way. How are you asking for all this from me, seeing as how, we would have to say in English, seeing as how I am, rather than the relative clause of the Latin, seeing as how I am, sum, mulier Samaritana. So the opposition here we can see is between Samaritan and Jew. That's what's confusing her, is how can you be asking me this? Our statuses, which have ethnic and religious connotations, ought to make this interaction impossible, or at least unthinkable. And then here at this point we get this commentary from the evangelist, from the author, who says, Iudai, enim introducing an explanation, right? Enim Iudai, the Jews, co ut untur. And the best way to see how this works is just to split it here. You remember the word utor, uti, to use, to make use of. This is co utor, co utuntur, non Iudai Samaritanis. Now the objective of a verb, even a compound form of utor, uti, is always going to be in the ablative case. You use things, or in this case people, in the ablative case. Co utor, though, is one of the weirdest words we will come across probably in our reading of the Vulgate together. It's not 100% certain, but it seems that it may have been actually coined for this particular moment. It's not really attested elsewhere until later on, and then generally in imitation of this passage. One can see easily enough how it's formed. It's not It's not a totally outlandish word, but it's an unusual one. Erasmus, in his annotations on his new Latin translation of the New Testament in the 1530s, has all kinds of interesting things to say about this. He's perplexed by it. He says, this is an unheard of word. Nobody says this. Nobody used it in antiquity. It seems to have been made up for the purpose of rendering the Greek word underlying this passage, which just means associate with. And there were perfectly good existing Latin words that one could use for that concept. But for whatever reason, it seems the translator here, the Vulgate translator, didn't find any of those existing words adequate. And so pulled co-utuntur sort of out of a hat in order to try and fit more exactly the way that he understood the Greek text underlying this expression. So that's just a weird little anecdote in the history of Latin here. But it need not detain us too much. It's clear what's meant: to associate with, to use in an older English sense, in the sense of to be around and have exchanges of words and deeds with people, to kind of move among them. This is our evangelist explanation of why it's unusual for a Judaeus and a Samaritanos, or in this case a Samaritana, mulier, to be interacting at all, let alone to be sharing drinking vessels.